Hi, this is Audrey Blair, and you're listening to the Change is Hard podcast, episode 14. Hi. Hi, and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. We are actually going to jump right into the conversation because it is a bit of a long one, but I do think it is a great payoff. I had an opportunity to interview a while ago an old colleague. Well, she's not old, but we were colleagues a while ago. And she had just come back from a pretty amazing adventure. And I wanted to capture her thoughts and her lessons from that time. And I think it really is incredible the things that we can learn in a short period of time when we extend ourselves and do something out of the ordinary, and how we can then come back and apply those lessons to our life moving on. But please enjoy this, and I will see you next time. Hi, Sarah. I have to say that I am very ecstatic to be talking to you today, and I appreciate you coming on. So, welcome.
Thank you, Audrey. It's great to be here.
I asked you to come on because you just did something that I think is pretty amazing. So, before we get into that, can you introduce yourself to us?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I am currently a client success manager in the greater Salt Lake area. And so I'm just based just right outside of Salt Lake. And just due to the geography that I am placed in right now, Salt Lake has some great mountains and some really phenomenal hiking. And really, since COVID, I've been taking the opportunity to take better advantage of the natural scenery and the surroundings around me. And so I've really gotten more into hiking, the outdoors, climbing, some mountaineering. And so that's really been consuming most of my life the past 2 years since COVID occurred. So,
You know what? You just blew me away with something. I was under the impression that this had been a hobby for much longer than just a few years. That's amazing. The reason why, folks, that is amazing to me is that Sarah just got back, I think just a week ago, from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
yes, that's correct.
So, so really, just in the last 2 years is when you kind of gotten into hiking and all of that?
Well, so I enjoyed hiking before COVID. That being said, I was most interested in just the easy to the moderate hike. So I wasn't really hiking more than maybe 3 to 4 miles when it came to hiking. That being said, once COVID hit, my gym closed down. I obviously wasn't seeing my friends as often as I would like. And so hiking for me became a chance to obviously stay in shape, be a more of a safe space to interact with people outside. And so consequently, I started getting a lot more into longer hikes, going from 3 miles to 8 to 10 miles per day. And a hiking group I was a part of, they actually invited me to do a rim to rim of the Grand Canyon in one day. So that would be 24 miles
Wow.
in about 13, 14 hours. And so I ended up just training all summer to get ready for that. And after that experience, I started just thinking to myself, what else is my body capable of doing? And I mean, 24 miles in one day felt like a grand physical feat for me. And just from talking to other friends in my hiking group and others, I heard more talk about the seven summits. Thinking about some of the biggest mountains in the world, and from what I heard, Kilimanjaro was kind of like a nice gateway to doing the rest of seven summits. And I'm not saying I want to do Everest or Denali per se. Just those conversations kind of made me just think, what more can I do to challenge myself physically after doing the Grand Canyon? And so Kilimanjaro just felt the logical next step.
Wow, that's amazing. I also enjoy hiking very much, having the privilege of living in Hawaii, I had an opportunity to do some pretty radical hiking. Certainly not an expert by any means, but went out with some people who were pretty crazy and have done a couple of A-level hikes in Maui, mostly in Maui, but in Oahu as well. So I can appreciate and understand. And thinking about those hikes, which were probably, I don't even know if they were 10 miles, less than 10 miles, trying to do something like for 24 is amazing. You actually mentioned a couple different types of hiking. You said mountaineering, you said climbing. What can you explain some of the differences between some of the things that you do? And I know in the past you've actually talked about ice hiking. No, that's not the right word, but tell me about some of these types of hikes and what the differences are.
Yeah, sure. So I would just say, for the most part, I just do really just do hiking, but I would say it just depends on the seasons. So when it comes to winter hiking, for example, I make sure to wear micro spikes, and that adds a lot more traction, especially when there is a lot of snow or a lot of ice in the ground. So micro spikes have definitely been a really critical part of my winter activities for sure. I have tried ice climbing as well. That's when you do, the crampons, and you have a ice axes in either hand, and so it's very similar to climbing. You're strapped in with a rope. You have someone belaying you in the bottom, but you have a very different form as you're climbing up to the top of a cliff or a mountain, wherever you want to go. And I would just say just a simple day hike. I mean, bring your regular hiking shoes, the right type of gear. But I would just say for me, hiking, I think I've probably graduated from just a simple 3 to 4 mile hike to now thinking about, okay, how do I purify my water? Do I have the right shoes? Do I have the right types of socks as well when it comes, so I don't have blisters that show up on my feet after hiking 12 plus miles in one day? Do I have the right type of food as well? I mean, when you're doing that much walking in one day, you want to make sure you have an equal amount of carbs and proteins. And so I would just say, like, for certain types of hikes, you just have to be a lot more mindful about the gear, the food, the water, and just the resources that you have. And so and then from mountaineering, I'm still kind of very much a beginner with that. But obviously that's when you have, an ice axe, you have to be, roped in. I've only done that once. I can't really speak to much. I can't say I'm much of an expert in that, but I'm definitely much more most interested, I would say, in the long endurance type of hiking, 10 to 12 miles, and just having the right types of equipment at my disposal. So.
Yeah, I think that would be that's my preference as well. And, it's no joke when you talk about having the right kind of equipment, especially food. I remember typically when we travel, we, at least for a while, would try and do some kind of hike. And I don't remember if I don't think it was Arizona. It was somewhere that we were, and we call ourselves going on a hike and did not pack the right type of food. And whatever we had was super, super salty. And we were all swollen, like fingers. It would hurt.
Oh no.
It was so
Oh
terrible. It was so terrible. So
Oh
those
gosh.
things are definitely important. And if you're doing it more and more, then you get, and just the idea of you purifying your water. So all of those things, as you get into it more and more, are interesting and something to learn about. Now, my daughter is into climbing. She's been doing kind of a class for the last year or so. And so this past Christmas, I did a theme for her, and I got her a bunch of climbing gear. So the shoes and some rope and the powder and the harness and things like that. And actually this Sunday, I'm taking her, and I bought her a full day class of climbing and belaying. So
Oh
she's going
wow.
to do, I think, 4 hours of one and then 4 hours of the other. So this weekend I'll be up close and personal and seeing a little bit more of what she's do. So I'm excited to see that. I'm excited for her. I
Yeah.
decided to not try that. Certainly as my first time. I'm going to go, it's out in a mountain here called Pilot Mountain. So I'm sure there's some hikes. So I'm just going to take my hiking shoes. And so, yeah, so I'm excited. And I will tell you, I wasn't sure what Mount Kilimanjaro was. I was thinking it was more climbing than hiking. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, so at the time when you were talking about going on this trip, it seemed so inaccessible to me because I thought I'm not a climber. But hearing you talk about it and your experience, I thought, well, that actually sounds like something that I could probably do. So I talked to my daughter. I was like, maybe we should put that on our bucket list over the next
Yes, you
next couple of
should.
years, so we can maybe next year or a year and a half start training and see what we can do. Anyway, I say that to say that you've inspired me. So
Yes, definitely keep me posted. That's exciting.
let's talk a little bit about your trip then. As you said, you just came back, but you had this idea of going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And coincidentally or fortunately, the company that you work for has what they call a boom campaign. And people
Mm-hmm.
can submit kind of a fantasy bucket list item, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And several people can turn that in. It gets evaluated, leadership votes, and you won basically a grant to help you to
Mm-hmm.
pay for this trip.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about what you put in your proposal and how you set that up to win this grant to get funding for you to take this trip.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really tried to make sure that the people who were evaluating my proposal really understood what hiking meant to me. And honestly, hiking and exploring the outdoors, especially during COVID, really saved my emotional health. When March 2020 hit, I just wasn't sure how I was going to cope emotionally. My family lives all over the world, and really physical exercise is really important to me. I loved my gym classes. I really met some great people in my exercise classes, and the fact that that was gone was really difficult for me. And so, anyways, I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to survive COVID, emotionally and just mentally speaking. And I was really looking for ways to really sustain my mental health. And so, for me, hiking and just really provide that fantastic solution for me. The fact that I could still, challenge myself physically, the fact I could still meet some really great, interesting people in my local area. I made some really wonderful friendships during my hikes around the area. And so I really tried to capture that with my proposal, just how integral of an activity this had been for me the past few years. And so I think that the fact that they understood just how meaningful of an activity this was for me, I think really helped that proposal get the traction that it needed to get approved. And I think also just making sure I had the right research in hand. I try to be very specific when it came to how much things would cost, how much the flight would be, how much my equipment would cost, the safari add-on, the actual type of climb. And so that was really important. And I'd also just say to just my enthusiasm as well for the project. I went to Africa a few years ago. I mean, I really loved the experience. I've always wanted to go back. I also just really love seeing wildlife in their local habitat. And so going on safari was something that's been on my bucket list for a really long time. And so I think the fact that I had the passion, the meaning attached, the research behind my proposal, I think all those factors together helped create that winning proposal.
Yes, definitely sounds like it. I mean, your why is so compelling, and it is encouraging and inspiring to hear how you handled COVID, because I think for a lot of people, emotionally, how they dealt with it wasn't necessarily to go out climbing mountains. You hear so many stories of people turning to like drinking more, or
Mm-hmm.
and just some of the mental issues of being more depressed, and having the distance that we had. And so for you to be able to find that's amazing. I love that. I love that story, and especially with your family being so far away. And let's be honest, it worked out nicely for you living in a place like Utah, outside of Salt Lake, where you have lots of places where you can go and hike and never get bored.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Tell me then, so you put out this proposal. Were you already training before you put in the proposal? Were you already planning and training for this? Or how far before your trip did you start your training?
I had already been doing a lot of activity in my life that would prepare me for a trip like this one. I mean, I was already going on 1 to 2 hikes per week. I was hiking with, 10 to 15 pounds on my back. So I was already, I think, in the right shape and stamina to do something like that, which I think also helped my case for sure. I think the proposal being one in June, I think it was more of a matter of just making sure that that would still be in the right type of shape for February 2022. That was still 8 months out, and so it was really a matter of for me to really sustain my fitness level and just make sure that I was still engaging in fall and winter hiking. That's when the micro spikes really came into play. And yeah, just sustaining what I'd already built. So, but yes, the hiking again had just been, again, with the gyms closed down. I mean, it was something that was already part of my daily, weekly activity. So
I see. You were already in good shape and you just needed to sustain that over the 8-month period before you went. So what was the reason that you were hiking with extra weight?
It was partially for necessity, partially for training as well. I always try to make sure to carry at least 3 liters of water. That's 5 to 7 pounds when it comes to water alone, making sure the right stacks. And also just one thing with hiking too, I mean, you have to make sure you have the right amount of layers as well, since oftentimes weather can change quite dramatically. And so I want to make sure I had a rain jacket, a fleece, and just making sure I had proper layers as well, just in case of emergency, first aid kit. So yeah, it's just a little bit of both. But I think it's just always better to be a little bit over prepared than under prepared. Obviously, you have to balance sometimes between carrying too much and not carrying enough. But yeah, I would just say, yeah, definitely a balance of training and trying to be prepared for the physical elements. So.
Yeah, you're making me feel like such an amateur. Like, because I'm such a minimalist when it comes to that kind of stuff, which I know is not right. I mean, certainly if I'm going on something that's a little bit longer, but where I am now, I'm just not near any of the kinds of hikes necessarily that I'm going to be gone for that amount of time. But again, you continue to inspire me. So I'm going to keep looking out for that. Okay. So for somebody who is just interested in getting started, let's say someone's like, look, okay, I was inspired by Sarah. I want to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. How much time would you say they would need in preparation to training? Let's say they're starting not from ground zero, they're in relatively good health, but maybe not an avid climber. How much time would you say someone would need to prepare?
Yeah, so I'd say if you're at a moderate fitness level, I would say at minimum, maybe 3 to 6 months. Yeah, probably ideally 6 months. So I think for someone at a moderate fitness level, I think making sure to hike with weight at least once per week and just engaging in physical activity, I would say at least 30 minutes a day. It can be. So what I really enjoyed doing before Kilimanjaro, I really enjoyed running on a treadmill with a good incline, just to get used to the idea of an incline, like something for Kilimanjaro for sure. Other people I knew really enjoyed swimming. My friend who went with me is really into cross country skiing. And so I would just say any type of, cardiovascular activity is really important, at least 30 minutes a day. And really, I would just also say to just being used to carrying weight on your back, at least 10 to 15 pounds, and just being mindful of what you can carry. Obviously, it's important to be a minimalist in many aspects, but again, you have to kind of achieve that balance of carrying as little as possible, but while also being prepared for some the physical elements as well, right? And so, yes, I think with those things in place, I think many people can prepare for something like Kilimanjaro. So.
Wow, that's not as long as I thought you were going to say. That sounds very accessible, which is kind of cool because I was thinking you were going to
Yeah,
say
and that
like
was
9 months to a year or something.
no. That was actually one of the most inspiring parts being the mountain, actually. So I would say the average age of people who I saw on the mountain was about mid to late 40s. We also saw people in their 60s as well that were climbing the mountain. That was really inspiring too. I mean, obviously they were going at a slower pace. But that's actually kind of the mantra of Kilimanjaro. It's people in Swahili say, pole pole. It means slowly, slowly. And so, and really the whole philosophy of the mountain is it's not so much how fast you're going, it's the fact that you will eventually get to the campsite, just enjoy the journey. And with that type of mantra, I would say Kilimanjaro really attracts a lot of people from different age categories as well as fitness levels as well. I mean, in my group, I had a former collegiate basketball player. I had another very avid weightlifter as well on my group, and so I was actually probably last in terms of physical fitness on my in my group. But we also on the hike as well, you see people with different body types, different ages. I mean, it really, and again, as long as you are at a certain fitness level at a certain baseline, I would say it's really accessible to a lot of people. It's
That's
just,
great.
it's much more of like a mental game, I would say, than a physical game. So,
Yeah, and that's just the truth for so many things. We think it's
yes,
physical, we think it's the tangible, but it's so much about the mentality. It's so much about what you
yes.
believe you can do. And yeah, I can't wait to get into that part of that with you. How big was your group?
Yeah, so it was four people total. I went with a friend of mine from business school, and we were just randomly set up with two other solo travelers from Europe, a guy from Switzerland, a woman from Germany. And we just meshed really well as a group. It was fantastic. We were about all the same age and all just very similar, paths of life as well. We just related to each other so well. And it just helps so much to have a really positive team camaraderie on that type of trip, especially on summit day. Summit day is by far the most brutal part of the hike. You go from
Don't give any away yet. We're not there
oh,
yet.
okay, yes. Well, I'll yeah, happy to explain more. That being said, it just helps to have that team camaraderie when things get especially difficult. So
Okay. Okay. So there's about four of you. So not obviously that's a really good size. So you're not
yeah,
overwhelmed with people all over the place. Cause that's another thing. People can feel like, oh, if there's too many people, there can be some
right,
anxieties
right.
there. I know that would kind of be true for me. And so that's really cool that they were very thoughtful about keeping the group small enough where you could kind of build that camaraderie and that mesh. And I would imagine that obviously with your friend, that is something that you guys will cherish. So having a small group like that, that was really wise of them. And, with your friend, you're going to cherish that time. But also, those two new people that you met, having that experience with them as well, just I would imagine there was some kind of bonding and connection that you all have and share that you just can't get from anything else.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no, I felt like this experience really bonded us all forever. We're already planning subsequent trips together to New York, maybe Everest Base Camp. But I think what's tricky is that it's really hard to replicate that experience again. I mean, obviously, I guess we can do Kilimanjaro again, but we still would have different guides. We'd still have, maybe some other people in our group as well. And so I think part of the meaning behind that experience is that it's just a very hard to replicate again. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly there's that the place and the time, all of that
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
matters. So let's talk a little bit about just this experience and what your journey was. You did your training, you're flying out, you're doing your thing. Oh, one more question just from a logistics and if would you certainly don't share what you got from a grant, but if somebody wanted to do this, what would you say they would need to budget for a trip like you did?
Sure. So I would say, let's see, I believe the hike, it's the actual trek, the climb itself. I believe it was about $2,600. And then I paid another 1,700 for the safari. So I would say, and then of course that doesn't include tips. So I would say in total about maybe $5,000
Okay.
with the climb and airfare, or sorry, climb and the safari would be helpful. So
Yeah. And that includes, so when you say the climb, they provide that your guides and the all,
correct.
all that. Okay.
Correct. It's a pretty all inclusive experience. Yes.
Got it. Got it. Cool. So back to the climb. So you're going out. Are you feeling nervous beforehand? I would imagine it's a mix of nerves and anxiety. Or are you just super excited, nothing nervous about this at all? Is there anything that you felt like that was niggling you a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say I was mostly excited for sure. I would say my biggest source of nerves was just wondering if I had the right equipment. So for example, my sleeping bag, I actually rented a sleeping bag with them. And, you know, again, the tricky thing about summit day, that's the coldest at night before summit day that you're sleeping on the mountain. And anyway, I just wasn't sure if my sleeping bag would be warm enough, if I needed additional liner. So I was wondering about that. And I would say the biggest thing too, that you also have to think about too is just weight. They give you a weight limit of 33 pounds for the porter to carry. And that 33 pounds was quite difficult to meet. I mean, that includes your sleeping bag, your liner, all of your clothing as well for the week. And since you're going through different terrain, you need everything from shorts and a t-shirt to, like a parka, ski gear to make sure that you're warm enough for summit day as well. So you're dealing with a very wide variety of temperatures. And so that was probably another big source of worry for me as well, is just, am I meeting the weight limit while also making sure I have all the adequate equipment at hand as well. And long story short, they gave me a little bit of leeway on the weight, which was very nice. I think I actually went 5 pounds over, and someone just had to carry an additional 5 pounds for me. But that was probably a big source of concern and worry before we hiked.
Okay. Yeah, that equipment. Well, it's nice that you had someone to
Yes.
help you to carry some of those things as well. So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
let's talk a little bit about some of your expectations for going on the trip from obviously there's a physical element, there's a mental element. What were some of your thoughts and what were you hoping to achieve going into this?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, the big thing was, of course, summiting, making it to the top. That's what everyone, dreams about, being at, over 19,000 feet. I mean, Kilimanjaro, it's known as, the roof of the world. There's very few mountains that are taller than 19,000 feet. So definitely that for sure. I was also just wanting to make sure that I really enjoyed the beauty around me and just really enjoyed the moment. I mean, every day of of Kilimanjaro is different. You're going from rainforest to the moorlands to the alpine desert, and then to another type of mountain forest. And so I also just want to make sure that I was enjoying and really just taking in and really soaking in the beauty around me. So that's what I was really hoping to accomplish when I was on the mountain, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are some of the lessons then? Obviously you had that, wanted to achieve reaching the top. Now having come back, what are some of the things that you perhaps learned or what was different than your expectations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when I set out to climb Kilimanjaro, I was thinking, obviously I wanted to take in the beauty. I wanted to make it to the top. I was also just excited about hitting one of the 7 summits as well, climbing the highest mountain in Africa, and just think about that physical achievement as well. What I didn't realize was just how much this achievement would be made as a result of so many other people's support and assistance. So, for example, I mean, I know I talked a little about my team. I know I could not have made it, first of all, with the other 3 climbers that I went with. For example, I'll give you one example here. On summit day, I was actually quite sick, and I'd had 2 hours of sleep, and was having some digestive issues, not feeling great. But I obviously really wanted to summit, and my friend ended up just giving me some gentle pushes every 5 to 10 minutes, just to show me and remind me that she was there. She was behind me every step of the way. And it just really was nice to have that just gentle push, every 5 to 10 minutes, because there were some times at the the summit day when it was very challenging. And so that's one example. I would also say too, we had this very robust staff. We had 16 people. We had two cooks. No, sorry, we had a cook, a waiter. We had two
Wait,
guides
a
as well.
waiter?
I know we had a waiter. I know. At first, I thought, is this a superfluous, type of role? But he was actually quite important, and I'm happy to go in more detail there about that. But suffice it to say, we had so many people they actually purified our water. They set up our tents. They took down our tents. They cooked for us, obviously. And so when I summited the mountain, I just thought, this was a wonderful experience. I'm so glad I'm on the top. But I would say one of the most special parts of the experience was really coming down the mountain and having this whole staff just cheer for us and sing for us and dance for us as a result of what we had just done. And I immediately just thought, this is great, but I couldn't have done it without you. I mean, it's because of you that I had clean water. It's because of you I had healthy, good food to eat. It's because of you that I knew what time to get up and I knew when to leave each day. I mean, it's because of our guides that provide us the great assistance. And so, and I think for me, it was just a really good reminder that there's so many. I can't really think of an achievement I've had in life where I didn't receive assistance from someone else. And anyway, so it definitely was not something that was made in isolation. Reaching the summit at sunrise with the rest of the group. I mean, it was the result of a lot of people. And I think when I was setting out to do Kilimanjaro, I'm not sure if I took that into account. I immediately just thought, okay, this would be a great achievement. I took off my bucket list. And it was actually a very humbling type of experience to just really be very mindful of just how many people have helped us make it up there to the top.
That's amazing. I mean, and to have, you're right, to achieve something like that, and you do think about what I'm going to do. You had to do it. Obviously, you had to take the steps. You had to get yourself prepared. You had to do the work to get there. But then recognizing that not only were they there to help and support you, but they cheered you on and really encouraged you along the way. Yeah, it's interesting that in those moments, it seems so obvious. And there's so many of those even smaller things than like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro that we could look around at the people around us and that support us and kind of stand in the gaps for us. So that's amazing. And I would imagine this is something that they do all the time. So talk a little bit about what sounds like they were just super supportive and their spirits were high and they were obviously there to support you. But do you ever get the sense that, sometimes you're with people that's their job and they treat it like, okay, this is my job, so I'm going to do this. I can't imagine that would be the attitude, but I don't know. What was the experience?
Oh my gosh. I learned so much from my guides, just in terms of their exuberance and passion for their jobs. So these guides that we had two of them. Both of them had summited Mount Kilimanjaro 120 times.
Oh my goodness.
And I don't know about you, but if I was doing the same hike twice a month with different people, but just doing the same terrain day in, day out, I think I'd get kind of tired of it. And that was definitely not the case with these guides. They were so excited to show me these beautiful flowers and plants that were only on the mountain. I remember when I asked one of them to take a picture of me by a tree that I just thought had really interesting roots and texture and just was very, very much a unique formation on the path. And after the guide took a picture of me, he then said, "Can you take a picture of me by the tree?" And I was kind of taken aback. I just thought, how many times have you seen this tree? But yet you are just in awe of this tree as I am, and it was just a good experience, just a really good reminder to me as well, just to, again, just like soak in like the present moment, but also, I don't know, I loved just how passionate they were about their jobs. And they told me how much they loved meeting people over the world and just how much they loved Kilimanjaro and what this hike really meant to them. And I don't know. I think it's very rare to find people who are that passionate about their line of work. And that was just wonderful to see. And the porters as well, but all of them had summited well over 100 times as well. But, and I'm sure, again, you obviously have, the monetary part of, the job that, of course, is necessary. But, these people were, singing and dancing for us. I mean, there's a couple of Kilimanjaro songs that all the porters are responsible for knowing. But they just sang them with such enthusiasm. They performed it for us a couple of times. And I don't think they were doing it just for the money. I think they just were really, again, I just think the mountain just brings out this enthusiasm and passion from these people. And so that was really special to see.
Hmm. That sounds amazing. And actually, as you were talking about that, it made me think back to when I was living in Hawaii. And I remember never getting tired of just looking around, just being outside and looking around at just all the amazingness around me. And, it wasn't part of my job per se, but I kind of understand just that sense. And it always made me sad when I would talk to people or hear people talking about how they were tired of the place or were ready to leave.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
certainly island fever is a thing, but I would always go, are you could you, what? Look around you. There is no place like this anywhere in the world. There are a lot of beautiful places, but the uniqueness of that place, I know I never grew tired of it. And so it sounds like there was that level of appreciation, obviously, for what they were doing. And there is something special about that. There's something infectious about that as well. I mean, can you imagine you're struggling climbing the mountain? They're like, okay, let's go, folks. Let's get it going.
Right.
Totally, totally different experience. So that matters so much, and that attitude, and I'm sure that attitude helped you if you were feeling a little bit down. And you talked a little bit, and we'll get here, but you talked about actually not feeling well as a part of this hike as well. But I'm sure that helped to change your attitude, your heart about what you're doing, and kept you going as well. So kudos to them. So having that help, having that support, and helping you to go along the way. And you talked about a lot of different things. In terms of preparation. So being prepared beforehand physically, but also being prepared with your equipment. And that allowed you to navigate when things didn't necessarily go so well. Not only with the terrain. So you talked about at one point you needed to have shorts on. At another point, you had ski gear on, and this is all happening within a matter of days. It's like you went through an entire year cycle in just in a matter of days. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that level of shift and change, you have to have a certain mentality about what you're doing and be very, very focused. So talk a little bit about what were some of the hard parts of this trip for you.
Yeah, I would say something that was also surprising to me was, again, like I would consider myself as someone who's in, good shape. And, and when it comes to most hikes with friends, I mean, I'm not usually the last person who finishes. But in my group of 4 people, I was often the last person to finish. And sometimes it was because I was, taking a picture or, how to do a quick restroom break. But I definitely had the slowest pace for sure. And one thing that was really important for me on the hike was recognizing that it was okay for me to go at that pace that I was at. And I think in other circumstances, if I were in the United States and hiking with these people, I would easily stop and take a picture or do a restroom break and then quickly, do a quick jog and catch with the rest of the group. But Kilimanjaro, you really can't do that. You're supposed to really maintain a very slow, even pace for the journey, to help you acclimatize and to help you really save your energy for summit day. So I think for me, that was one of the hardest parts. There were some times when it was just me and the guide at the very back. And in the first few days, I just thought, am I just out of shape? Am I just really slow? But I just kind of had to accept where I was at. Again, I mean, even though I think I'm in was good shape. I mean, I was also with, I think I mentioned like a former collegiate basketball player and another guy who was just in supremely top shape as well. And So I just had to be okay with my level and, be okay being last. But that was, again, that's one nice thing about the mountain. It's not about the speed. It's about just going slowly, enjoying the journey, and you'll get to the camp when you get to the camp, but just enjoy the journey along the way.
Gosh, isn't that that's amazing? Because we tend to want to look at others where they are ahead of
Yes.
us and
Yes.
compare. For crying out loud, I would imagine, an athlete. You said he played basketball.
So I was with a woman who was a former collegiate basketball player and
Okay.
another guy who was just in top notch shape. I don't think I've ever met anyone in better shape than him. He
Okay.
was the hiker from Switzerland.
Yeah.
So
Well, I just mean to say you're walking with a basketball player. One step equals three of yours, right?
right, right, exactly, exactly.
So it's funny how we still though are so tempted to compare and look and somehow want to feel like we should be in a different place, or as you said, going at a different pace than what is necessary for the journey that we're on. That's such a hard lesson. And it's times like this when it becomes so obvious that it's a great reminder of those kinds of things. And you talked about even acclimatizing, because if you go too fast, you're not ready. Your body physically is not ready to take in the air at that level. So the pacing matters so that
Yes.
your body can be preparing itself and get ready to reach higher elevations and be able to breathe. Because if not,
Yes,
then,
exactly.
you can't breathe.
Exactly, exactly.
And in each day, it wasn't a constant uphill. Was that so? Talk a little bit about the terrain and some of the changes from on a day-to-day basis. Was it, if you've been hiking, that it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just some smooth path all the way up to the top.
Right, right. So, I mean, I will say, first of all, it's a very well paved trail, obviously. It's summited by, thousands of people each year. That being said, there is an incline for sure. And I would say the incline is fairly consistent. The incline obviously increases on certain parts of the hike for sure, but there are also some downhill parts of it. So the mentality on Kilimanjaro is that you climb high and you sleep low, again, to help with the acclimatization, right? And so because you're sleeping low, there obviously were those downhill descents as well to get down to the campsite. And yeah, going downhill, that's when I go especially slow, because I find that I'm more likely to slip and fall, and others were more comfortable going faster. So what the inclines are like in terms of the terrain, I mean, yes, you definitely have rocks in the trail. There is some rock scrambling as well, especially on day 5. There's a wall called Barranca Wall, which involves some rock scrambling for sure. We also had 1 or 2 rainstorms as well. And so sometimes, the road would just be quite muddy as well. And so you also just had to be mindful of just, the mud as well on the terrain. But yeah, overall, yeah, it's definitely quite varied for sure. So
Gosh, you really did live a whole lifetime out there. Like
I
what?
did.
How many
Yes.
days total going? How many days going up, and then how many days coming back?
Yeah. So to get up the mountain, it was you summit on day 7, and summit includes going up as well as going down the mountain, and then day 8 you're continuing the descent. So in total I was on there for 8 days.
Oh, wow. So that's interesting. So you summit on day 7 and you're back
Yes.
by the end of day 8?
Exactly, exactly. So it takes you 7 days to climb up to the mountain, and then about a day and a half to get all the way down. Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's so many
Yeah.
metaphors in there. There's so many metaphors in
Yes.
this trip.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So very, very slow ascent. They want to make sure you have a very high chance of success as you're acclimating. And then once you reach 19,000 feet, I mean, you can go as fast as you want on the way down. So
That's interesting. Which makes sense because it's the opposite of diving. You can go down. I mean, you should kind of take your time going down, but you can go down
Right.
much quicker than you do coming up. Coming up, that's when you want to go super, super slow so you
Right.
don't catch the bends, right? Well, I guess I didn't think. I mean, I don't know that I thought it would, equal amount of time because, yes, it is quicker going down than going up, but I did not
Mhm.
realize literally you're the next day after you summit that you're back. So
Exactly.
that's amazing.
Exactly. Hmm.
Wow.
Hmm.
It almost feels like you're going all slow and then you get reach the top and it's like everyone go and you're running down the mountain or something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to an extent. Yeah. And again, that's kind of the crazy part of Summit Day. You're told to go up 3,000 feet from 16 to 19,000 feet summit. And then that same day, you have to descend 6,000 feet. And so it's even deeper than the Grand Canyon. I mean, it's a pretty steep descent for sure. So,
Mm.
yeah. So again, I was also going pretty slow that day too. So,
Yeah. Well, now obviously not. You took so is it up and over? It's not the same path going down as you took
no,
up.
it is not the same path. So yeah, Kilimanjaro, it's a pretty fascinating mountain how they've shaped it. So there's about, I would say, five or so different paths to get up to Kilimanjaro. We obviously just took one of those paths going up, but then we actually took the supplier route going down. So that is essentially a route that's, it's people going downhill, and it's primarily used for hikers that want to go downhill, as well as the suppliers who are bringing up and down like fresh fruits, vegetables, water as well from the bottom. And so it was actually pretty amazing. As we're somebody going. So as we're going down the mountain, we were sharing it with these suppliers who were carrying these huge, jugs of water and duffel bags like on their heads, and they're just booking it down the mountain with 50 plus pounds on their head, on their back of their back, on their backs. And the whole time I just thought, like, who's the real hero here? I mean, is it me who just climbed Kili, or is these people who are running like up and down the mountain to supply the hikers? And definitely the latter for sure. So
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yes. Okay. That was surprising. Okay, so then you go up, you're at the top, you come down. So you said you weren't feeling well on summit day though.
yes,
What was
correct.
going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, it came at the cost of a really cool cultural experience that I had. So, on the climb, again, so they're cooking, fresh meals for us every day. And our porters and guides, on the other hand, they have the same meal every day, and it's called ugali. And it's essentially a mix of cornmeal and water, and then they mix it with fresh meat, vegetables. And I actually went to their tent and I actually asked if I could try some of their ugali. And I was the
Oh.
only one of the climbers who tried it. And so I had a little bit of their food, and I don't think they purified the water as well as they did for us hikers. I'm not sure if the meat was completely cooked, but needless to say, I got pretty sick the
Oh
next
no.
day. But it was still fun. Like, I still ate, this ugali with about, 15 other people in this tent. And they were really excited, share their meal with me. And none of the other hikers had that experience. But yes, that came at the cost of me being quite sick the next day. And it was right before summit day. Yeah, had some digestive issues for sure. And on top of that, our tent that my friend and I were sharing actually leaked. And so we were trying to clean up this water and leakage like inside of our tent. And so that amounted to, 2 hours of sleep. So both of those factors together, like indigestion issues and lack of sleep, I was not feeling great on summit day. So our our waiter, who was also kind of like our butler, he woke us up at midnight and said, "Hey, it's time. It's summit day, And so you wake up at midnight, and I just thought, oh man, I'm not feeling good, right? So I think I had some Pepto Bismol, and anyway, yeah, so we had our a snack at 12:30, and then we started summiting at 12:45 in the morning. And yeah, anyway, not feeling great as well. My guide, one of the guides actually noticed that I was going pretty slow and not feeling I was not feeling 100%. And so he told me to give him his my pack for him to carry. And I first just said, "Oh, I'm okay. Just carry my water. I still want to carry something. I don't want you to have to carry my pack in addition to your pack." Oh, he ended up carrying 3 packs total. Mine, the collegiate basketball player, girls, who was also not doing great, and then his own. So he was just a complete rock star. But anyway, so the guy told me, "Oh no, you are giving me your pack because everyone has to make it to sunrise. And if you continue at this pace, you won't be making it for the rest of the group." So Summit Day is the one day where your pace actually matters in relation to the rest of the group. The other days, it doesn't matter too much, but this is the one day it's really important for everyone to stay together.
Mm.
And so it was also just a good lesson to me of just being humble and being willing to accept that this guide who had summited Kilimanjaro 120 times, he knew what he was saying. He was the expert here. I was not. This is my first time on the mountain. I reluctantly gave him my pack, and you know what? My burden was lifted. The hike became quite a bit easier, and I was able to keep up with the rest of the group as a result of not having the day pack and not having that extra weight on me. And so, which was great. When you're going up to 16,000 feet to 19,000 feet, you want them as the minimum amount of weight, if any, as possible, right? And so I started to feel a lot better at like 18,000 feet. On Summit Day, you start from, it's called Cassava Camp, which is where we started, to Stella Point. And that's the most brutal part of Summit Day. You're very steep incline. Yeah.
Are you in snow? I mean, you're at the top here.
Yes,
So was this cold?
You're in snow. It's cold. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. You're tired. And it's just a long single file line of everyone has their headlamps on, single file line. And it's a pretty difficult ascent for sure. And then once you make it to, it's called Stella Point, that's about 18,000 feet. It's just this huge euphoric experience because you're not quite the summit yet, but from Stella Point to Uhuru Peak, which is the ending point, it's fairly flat, very easy. So Stella Point was just this huge point of celebration for everyone. I mean, I remember when I was at Stella Point, I think the guides and other climbers they put on Buffalo Soldier by Bob Marley. And there was just this like spontaneous like dance party happening at Stella Point, because it's just this point where from Stella Point to the rest of the peak, it's such a piece of cake, but you just have to make it to Stella Point. So once I reached Stella Point, I felt a lot better. And of course, having a nice flat 45-minute hike to the top was quite a bit easier. But yeah, that was my summit day experience.
Wow. And can you imagine getting that close and then for some reason being like,
Yes.
"Oh, sorry, I can't go the rest of the way"?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that does happen for some people. There's some people who just can't keep going. I mean, and we were very lucky. Like, I actually was on altitude medication as well, and I responded very well to that. And so, yeah, so for most, other than, the digestive issues I was experiencing, I didn't have any headaches or nausea or, dizziness, which is what you would experience if you weren't on this medication, right? But
you were just blowing up the tent for your...
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So but Stella Point was just, it was still so wonderful to get there, because from here on out, it's very easy climb and it's flat. Like, you can see your destination from Stella Point, which is just fantastic. So, but yeah, amazing. It was such a cool experience though.
Yeah. Just keep going, right? That's definitely the message. Sometimes we get to a point where we kind of can see, or we get through the hardest part. We don't realize it's the hardest part, but we think, "Oh, I can't go on because this is just too hard." And if we just keep going,
totally,
you reach the summit.
Yes. And the summit, it was like this euphoric moment for sure. We get there, it felt a lot better. My whole group was singing like Climb Every Mountain, and I'm singing at the top of my lungs at, 18,000 feet. We're feeling really good. And sunrise was just starting to happen. And it was just this magical moment on the mountain. The sun was just peeping out. The colors across the mountains was just absolutely glorious. It's the first time in my life that I literally was above the clouds as well. For most of the hike, you're kind of in parallel with the clouds, but on summit day, the clouds are beneath you. It's a very unique moment for sure. It's colors, the clouds, and then you also have this glacier on top. I think people just call it the Kilimanjaro Glacier, but it's famous actually for a pretty tragic reason. It's actually receding quite quickly due to global warming. It actually wasn't supposed to be around in 2020. A lot of experts thought this glacier would be disappearing. And unfortunately, there's still remnants of the glacier still on top of the mountain, but it's still pretty humbling to think too, okay, I mean, I'm on this beautiful top of the summit, but what are we also doing to our world and our environment? It was interesting talking to our guide. He just said, I remember this was just one large, long glacier, and it's just a fraction, obviously, of like what it used to be. And so that was kind of like a sobering thing to see on the mountain. And then you also had this really amazing crater as well. I mean, you're hiking on a dormant volcano, so consequently you have craters as well on the top. But yeah, it was just this unique, beautiful moment. Sunrise, peaceful, and everyone is just on cloud nine. Or above cloud nine. You're above the clouds.
Yeah, you're above cloud. You're past cloud 9.
You're past cloud 9. Yeah.
You're like cloud 10 or 11.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it was just amazing being up and just thinking, wow, I made it. This is something I've thought about for a long time. And I'm here, and I almost didn't want to go down. It was just,
I bet. How long do they let you stay up there and celebrate? I mean,
so I would say I was on top for about a half an hour. I took the needed pictures, took a video. I could have been up there for much longer though. I mean, I was very fortunate. My body had very much responded well to the altitude medication. And yeah, I would have loved to have been there longer, but still spent some good time in the on the top for sure. So yeah, but also just seeing people as well. I mean, because obviously when you are on the mountain for 8 days, you're seeing the same people, every day. You're often, staying at the same campsites, you're passing them on the trail, et cetera. And it was also just cool to congratulate other people on the top and just say, you made it. We're here. We did it. Just seeing people who had also struggled along the way and were now on the top, and seeing people who were, in their 60s and 70s who were making it and trekking. It was a really cool, inspiring moment.
Sounds fabulous. Wow, what a journey. And all the while you're eating fresh fruits and veggies. It's just the whole experience just sounds...
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I was not expecting to have it be such a glamping experience, but it was definitely glamping, 3.0. I mean, we had this cook who was just phenomenal. Oh yeah, I've actually a funny story about the cook. So he made amazing food for us. We had fresh soups every day. We had fried chicken, empanadas. I mean, we had some great stuff. And I remember this one day I just thought, pizza just sounds really good. And I was just kind of thinking just how great it would be to have some fresh pizza. That's usually like my meal of choice, like after a long hike. And the next day, I kid you not, we had pizza for dinner. I have no idea how you cook pizza at 15,000 feet. I mean, I have no idea, but there was pizza with a fresh crust and lots of vegetables and cheese. I mean, it was absolutely magical. Yeah. And again, it just goes back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, these people, they took such good care of us. They gave us the right amount of carbs and proteins. They're very strategic as well when it comes to helping us stay hydrated. I mean, they're giving us soups every meal. They woke us up at 6 a.m. every day to give us hot water to drink hot chocolate or drink electrolytes or what have you. So I mean, they just took such good care of us, right? And so when you get back to the bottom, you just think, I couldn't have done it without the cook and all these other people who were transporting these fresh fruits and vegetables up and down the mountain. So
That's amazing. And it sounds like they did everything they absolutely could in their power to help you to enjoy the
yes.
present moment.
Oh, absolutely. My only job was to hike and stay hydrated. That was that was a running joke. And they did everything else to ensure that we could enjoy the hike and not worry about water purification, tent setup, our food, or anything like that. So
Gosh. I'm just fascinated about you're talking about how they're purifying water on the spot. You're obviously
yes.
going to the bathroom somehow. Like we don't even have time to get into all of those details,
Yes.
but that's just the whole thing is just fascinating. It sounds amazing.
It really
Well,
was.
so you've been back now for about a week. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
What are some things that have started doing or want to do to continue the mindset of when you were on this journey?
Yeah, definitely. That's something that I've been thinking about, quite a bit since coming back. So I think one thing, there's a lot of directions I can certainly go here. I think for me, and I know I mentioned this earlier, but one of the best mantras of the whole hike again is pole pole. It's slowly, slowly for obvious reasons, right? You want to acclimatize. They want to make sure that you save your energy. They want to make sure you get used to a whole new oxygen level, right? But I think one of the cool things about having that mantra on the mountain for 8 days is that when you go slowly on the mountain, I found that my conversation with people was a lot more meaningful because I wasn't so much worried about the pace or the speed. I was able to carry on really interesting conversations with the guides. I was more attuned to just the beautiful plants and flowers around me. And I think sometimes life in general, it's very easy to approach it from an attitude of I have to make this milestone at a certain time. I have to keep up with the Joneses. I have to get these things done quickly. And sometimes there is some virtue in thinking about speed and timing. But I think something that I want to capture from my hiking experience is just enjoying the journey, not worrying so much about when I'm going to hit which milestone. The fact is that I'm going to make the milestone, but there shouldn't be so much a timer set on when that's going to be met. It's okay if it takes me some more time to figure out my career. It's okay if I maybe take a longer time to settle down and get married or have a child. And it's okay that maybe my journey is personalized for me. It's not about the speed or the timing when I hit a certain milestone. And so I think that there's a lot of virtue in applying this whole pole mentality to different aspects of my life. And so it's something I definitely want to think about for sure. I know I touched on this previously, but I think just also remembering too that so many things you accomplish in life are not made in isolation. I mean, obviously I can joke about, the cook making us pizza or the guide carrying my pack. But I mean, when you're part of a community or a team, you really can't attribute your whole achievement to just yourself. And that's something that was very true on the mountain for sure. When you're on Kilimanjaro, you're part of a team, you're part of a greater community when it comes to the staff that you are working with. We had 16 people that I hiked with, and then you're also just part of a greater Kilimanjaro community as well. You meet people from all over the world in different walks of life, and you're congratulating and cheering people on along the way. And it was great to cheer on this young family from Poland, and this man, I think he was in his mid 40s. He was doing Kilimanjaro by himself because his friend couldn't join him, and we tried to include him in our group every now and then when we saw him on the trail. And I don't know, I just think that life is a lot more meaningful and beautiful when you're part of a community. And I love the quote, "No man is an island." And I just think it's important to think about the community and the group that you're with. And really, I think a lot of the meaning that you create in your life is going to come from other people. And so those are a couple of thoughts that I have in the mountain.
Well, I think those are wonderful thoughts to close out our time. The lessons that you were able to capture. And I'm excited for you and what you will now do because of this experience. And I know that, as I said, and I mean it, you really have inspired me as well. And I'm sure many, many others. I so appreciate you coming on and sharing this experience. It has been a great pleasure.
Thank you, Audrey. It was such a pleasure to meet with you as well. And thank you for helping me put my thoughts together. And thank you so much for the conversation. I really, really appreciate it.